What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Saturday, December 29th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, let's take a look at the point guard position. I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Elfrid Payton from the New York Knicks playing the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing point guards, but Elfrid Payton averaged 30.1 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 28 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He scored 41 fantasy points last game in 29 minutes with a 29% usage rate. He's projected at 25.9 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.4 times value. He's $4,800 FanDuel salary and $700 more on DraftKings. So I love that FanDuel price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 216 points scored in this game. So I like Elfrid Payton here versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I'm going to give you another value play here. I like Delon Wright from the Detroit Pistons playing the Golden State Warriors, who have the second worst defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Delon Wright averaged 19.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 21 minutes per game with a 14% usage rate. He scored 34 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 21 and 42 minutes. He's projected at 24.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.9 times value. He's only $4,200 FanDuel salary and $600 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 223 points scored in this game, so I like Delon Wright here versus the Golden State Warriors. Now, if you're looking for a stud at the shooting guard position, I like Devin Booker from the Phoenix Suns playing the New Orleans Pelicans, who have a good defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing shooting guards. Devin Booker averaged 40.6 fantasy points per game on the season in an average of 36 minutes per game with a 30% usage rate. He scored 39 fantasy points last game in 35 minutes with a 31% usage rate. He's projected at 39.5 fantasy points here tonight, and he's $7,500 FanDuel salary and $1,600 more on DraftKings. Oh, that's 5.3 times value on FanDuel. Not as much value on DraftKings because he's priced way up, so I love that FanDuel price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 223 points scored in this game, so I like Devin Booker here versus the New Orleans Pelicans. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Tobias Harris from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Toronto Raptors, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Tobias Harris averaged 35 fantasy points per game on the season in an average of 34 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. He scored 40 fantasy points last game in 28 minutes with a 21% usage rate. He's projected at 34.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.4 times value. He's $6,400 FanDuel salary and $600 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 218.5 points scored in this game. Great matchup here. So I like Tobias Harris here versus the Toronto Raptors. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports You can try the position optimizer where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new player trends tool where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Now, a nice mid-range play is Kelly Oubre Jr. from the Golden State Warriors playing the Detroit Pistons, who have the 4th worst defense overall. And although they've been pretty good versus opposing small forwards, Kelly Oubre Jr. averaged 33.2 fantasy points per game on the season in an average of 35 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. He scored 30 fantasy points in 30 minutes last game with a 24% usage rate. He's projected at 31.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.6 times value. He's $5,600 FanDuel salary and 100 more on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites. Vegas thinks there's going to be 223 points scored in this game, so I like Kelly Oubre Jr. here versus the Detroit Pistons. Okay, who do we have at the power forward position? I like Domantas Sabonis from the Indiana Pacers playing the Boston Celtics, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing power forwards. Domantas Sabonis averaged 41.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 35 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. He scored 38 fantasy points last game in 40 minutes with a 25% usage rate. He's projected at 41.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.7 times value. He plays the Celtics really well. He scored 38, 51, and 45 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Celtics, so I wouldn't be surprised for him to hit 45 plus fantasy points here and get you 5 times value or more. He's $8,900 FanDuel salary and 300 less on DraftKings, so I like that DraftKings price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 218 points scored in this game, so I like Domantas Sabonis here versus the Boston Celtics. Okay, moving on to the center position. I like Steven Adams from the New Orleans Pelicans playing the Phoenix Suns, who have a good defense overall, but they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing centers. Steven Adams averaged 29.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 27 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 26 fantasy points last game in 30 minutes. He's projected at 28 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.2 times value. He's $5,400 FanDuel salary and 400 more on DraftKings. So we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 223 points scored in this game. So I like Steven Adams here versus the Phoenix Suns. The other center that I like here tonight is Thomas Bryant from the Washington Wizards playing the Chicago Bulls, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing centers. Thomas Bryant averaged 28.3 fantasy points per game on the season in an average of 25 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. He scored 37 fantasy points last game in 32 minutes with a 21% usage rate. He's projected at 27.4 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.3 times value. He's $5,200 FanDuel salary and $1,600 more on DraftKings. So I love that FanDuel price. So I like Thomas Bryant here versus the Chicago Bulls. If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.